Darkness had settled over the valley like a warm blanket. The mist crept through the trees like an old shawl, carrying with it the scent of oak and pine. At the field hospital, a few miles behind the front line, Sergeant Thomas Miller, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion, was trying once again to fall asleep inside his tent. But it was no use. For the past week, the same relentless ritual had kept him awake. He heard it again, the creaking footsteps, and then that familiar, wheezing breath. Despite his fear, Thomas rose from his seat, driven by a sense of duty. He already knew who was coming, just like every night. When he stepped out of the tent, under the pale kiss of moonlight, he saw the silhouette waiting for him. A young soldier, his face covered in mud and blood, his eyes staring into the void, his uniform in tatters. Thomas's heart tightened. This soldier was Private Johnny Davies, and every night Johnny came, waiting for Thomas to heal him. "You again, Johnny?" Thomas whispered. Johnny didn't answer, just stood there breathing heavily. His right arm dangled, almost completely severed at the wrist. The wound on his chest was wide and deep, as if struck by a cannonball. Though weighed down by sleepless nights, Thomas reached out his hand. "Come on, Johnny. Let's get you inside." Johnny, as if in a trance, entered Thomas's tent and lay down on the stretcher. Thomas prepared the bandages and antiseptic with trembling hands. Johnny's wounds were the same every night. His arm was severed, his chest pierced. Every night, Thomas cleaned them, stitched them, bandaged them, and every night the look of hopelessness on Johnny's face stabbed Thomas like a knife. "Where did you come from, son?" Thomas asked as he stitched his arm. It was a pointless question, because Johnny never answered. He just waited with that raspy breath. Hours passed. When Thomas finished his work as usual, Johnny's wounds looked as if they had never been there. But Thomas knew. By dawn, Johnny would be gone, and the next night he would return with the same wounds. Thomas struggled to make sense of this situation. At first he thought he was hallucinating. It must have been a trick of the mind, brought on by the trauma of war, sleeplessness, and exhaustion. But this nightly reality had brought him to the brink of madness. Johnny's cold skin, the metallic smell of blood. These were real. One morning after Johnny left, Thomas couldn't take it anymore. He had to solve this mystery. He began rummaging through the records at the Sahara Hospital. He examined the oldest ledgers, the worn pages one by one. He spent hours searching for the name he was looking for. Finally, on the back pages of a dusty ledger, a name caught his eye: Private Johnny Davies. Thomas's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the date next to the record, 1918, just as he had expected. But the note written just below it froze him. Killed in action. Body not found. Thomas's world was turned upside down. Johnny was dead, decades ago. So what was this thing that came every night? Was it a ghost, or a terrifying illusion created by his own mind? That night, Thomas was more afraid than ever. Lying in his bed, sleepless, he stared at the ceiling. Hours passed. No creak came. No footsteps echoed. No rasping breath. For a moment, Thomas felt relieved. Maybe this nightmare was finally over. But just then, the flap of his tent slowly opened. A cold gust of wind swept in, carrying that familiar scent, mud, blood, and decay. Thomas jumped up from his bed. Johnny was there, but this time he was different. His wounds had healed. His uniform was clean. His eyes were no longer empty. They were filled with pain as they stared at Thomas. Thomas looked at Johnny in shock. What happened? Johnny's lips moved. The most heart-rending whisper Thomas had ever heard echoed inside the tent. "You healed me, Corporal." A sad smile appeared on Johnny's face. "My soul could not find peace. I was bound to this world because of my wounds. Every night I was waiting for you to heal me so that I could finally find peace." Thomas' eyes filled with tears. Realizing that this young soldier whom he had been trying to heal for years was actually a soul that had died decades ago, left an indescribable pain in his heart. He found himself both the healer and the last hope of a ghost, making a last-ditch effort to put his soul to rest. Johnny looked at Thomas one last time. This time there was gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Corporal. I can finally go." And Johnny was gone like a breeze. Only the smell of pine and Thomas' loneliness remained in the tent. Thomas never saw Johnny again after that night. His sleep returned to normal, but that void in his soul never closed. Every time he wrapped a bandage, every time he smelled antiseptic, Johnny's face came to life before his eyes. Even years later, Thomas never forgot those sleepless nights and that dead soldier he healed. He learned the hard way that war wounds not only bodies but also souls, sometimes even stranding them in this world. And he, the sleepless healer, became a ghost's last hope,